Somewhere out there right now, there is an animal living its absolute best life. It's completely wild, completely free, and it has absolutely no idea what's coming. It has no idea that in a few hundred or maybe a few thousand years, some descendant of ours is going to look at it and decide that it's going to live inside our homes and eat out of a little bowl with its name on it. Because that is exactly what we humans do. We look at wild, unpredictable creatures and think, what a friend.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dismantle everything you think you know about pets and human companions. We're going to evaluate which wild animals are actively sitting in the domestication pipeline right this second, and we'll figure out which species might actually make the cut to become the next dog, the next cow, or the next animal sitting on your couch.
Okay, here's our game plan for today. First, we'll cover why taming is not domestication. Then, we'll look at the strict domestication checklist, dive into our leading candidate, the fox, explore some surprising contenders like crows and capybaras, look at an 8-legged wildcard, and finally wrap up with how domestication actually changes us. All right, part 1. Taming is absolutely not domestication.
Before we even look at our candidates, we have to clear up a huge misconception. People are constantly confusing taming a wild animal with true domestication. A tame animal is really just an individual that has learned to tolerate us. Take Stepan, this famous Russian bear who apparently loves watching TV and giving hugs. Sure, that's adorable, but Stepan is just a tame bear. True domestication, that is genetic. It's a fundamental biological shift running through an entire population, passed down generation after generation. Domesticated animals literally look, behave, and even think differently than their wild counterparts. You can actually see exactly how this genetic shift plays out by looking at Dmitry Belyav's famous 1950s Soviet fox experiment. Belyav basically just took silver foxes and selected only the friendliest ones to breed. And guess what? Within just a few generations, massive physical changes came along for the ride. Nobody was selecting for floppy ears, spotted coats, or curled tails, but they showed up anyway. They even started barking. It's wild. It proves that domestication can happen incredibly fast, and that an animal's behavior and biology are completely tangled up together.
So moving on to part 2, the domestication checklist.
Look, for an animal to become our next pet or livestock, it can't just be cute, right? It has to pass a really rigorous biological job interview. There are 4 strict criteria on this checklist. First, they absolutely must breed in captivity. This is a huge hurdle that completely rules out animals like giant pandas or cheetahs. Second, they need a flexible diet. You cannot domesticate a koala because they basically only eat slightly toxic eucalyptus leaves, and honestly, the logistics of feeding that to a population would be a nightmare. Third, you need a variance in temperament in the wild. Basically, you need some individuals to be naturally less aggressive so you actually have something to select for. And finally, they must have compatible social structures, like a pack or a herd hierarchy, so a human can just kind of slot in as the boss.
To see what happens when a species just utterly fails this checklist, all we have to do is look at the zebra. People always ask, why didn't early humans domesticate zebras like we did horses? Well, zebras have almost zero variance in their aggression. Every single zebra is basically ready to throw down at all times. Seriously, zookeepers are statistically more likely to get injured by a zebra than a lion. Zebras literally looked at the domestication pipeline and said, yeah, absolutely not.
Okay, part 3. The leading candidate, foxes.
Based on that strict checklist we just went through, scientists genuinely believe the fox is the closest wild animal to full domestication right now. And it goes way beyond those deliberate Russian breeding experiments. Something amazing is happening entirely on its own. Urban fox populations all over the globe are independently evolving. City foxes are measurably bolder, way less fearful of us, and actually better at reading human cues than rural foxes. Because less fearful foxes do better in cities, natural selection is already doing the heavy lifting for us. Give it a little time and some intentional breeding, and this is an animal that basically already wants to be a dog.
Which brings us to part 4, surprising contenders, specifically crows and capybaras.
First up, the crow. Now, domesticated birds aren't exactly new, but crows are terrifyingly intelligent. They act way less like wild animals and a lot more like informal roommates. They recognize individual human faces, they hold grudges, and they will literally leave shiny gifts like buttons or pieces of foil for humans who feed them. They've even figured out our urban infrastructure. They'll drop nuts in traffic lanes so cars crush them, and then wait at the crosswalks to safely go grab the food. If we could breed them to depend more heavily on human social bonds, a domesticated crow is a very, very real possibility.
And then we have the capybara. This enormous grass-eating rodent brings the absolute ultimate chill energy. They are super social, they communicate constantly, and they already act as living furniture for ducks, monkeys, and birds who just sit on them. Now, sure, they do need water access, but they already hit the major checklist items: a flexible diet, a defined social hierarchy, captive breeding, and a super calm demeanor. If a targeted breeding program started today, you could probably have a recognizably domesticated capybara in just 100 generations.
All right, part 5, the 8-legged wild card.
Now, this next one might make you just a little bit uncomfortable, because domestication isn't always about cuddly pets on your sofa. Historically, it's mostly been about food. Enter the 8-legged wild card, the octopus. If we run the octopus's resume through our checklist, this alien-like creature surprisingly ticks a whole lot of boxes. Flexible diet of fish and crustaceans? Yes. Breeding in captivity? Increasingly, yes. And crucially, they have massive variance in temperament. Researchers note that individual octopuses have totally distinct personalities, ranging from shy to super playful or really aggressive. They will literally squirt water at people they don't like. Now, their lack of a social structure, since they're solitary and sometimes, well, cannibalistic, is a massive logistical hurdle. But the raw materials for domestication? They are undeniably there.
And listen, this isn't just theory. Driven by a massive global demand for food that is rapidly outpacing wild catches, researchers at Spanish institutions are actively closing the life cycle of octopus farming. They are successfully breeding them in captivity through multiple generations right now. Selecting for calm, curious octopuses is not impossible. And as history shows us over and over again, not impossible is exactly how every single domestication story begins.
Finally, part 6, how domestication changes us.
Let's zoom out for a second here. We've talked a ton about how we change animals, but the most profound thing about domestication is that it's a genuine two-way evolutionary partnership. We don't just change them, they fundamentally change us. Our previous domestications forever altered the trajectory of humanity. Dogs didn't just become our best friends. Researchers actually argue they helped early humans develop the theory of mind. That's the ability to model what another being is thinking, which massively boosted our social intelligence and our hunting skills. Meanwhile, the ancestor of the cow, the auroch, which was this terrifying, aggressive 6-foot-tall beast, eventually gave us the agricultural foundation we needed to build dense cities, invent writing, and discover mathematics. Seriously, civilization as we know it was built right on the backs of domesticated animals.
And what's truly mind-blowing is that this ancient cycle is continuing right under our noses. Scientists are currently observing specific, isolated populations of modern wolves just hovering at the edges of human settlements. They are passively undergoing a second, completely independent domestication event. Just by living near us, the bolder, calmer wolves are surviving and reproducing more effectively. It is the exact same passive selection process that gave us dogs tens of thousands of years ago, literally playing out all over again in real time.
So as we look at the animals standing at the edge of our settlements today, whether that's the urban fox, the brilliant crow, the giant capybara, or the incredibly complex octopus, we aren't just deciding what animal we want hanging around. Domestication pulls our species together. When we finally invite these new species inside and intertwine our biology with theirs, who is humanity gonna become because of that relationship? It is such